It's been 4 years and I thought I was past it, but after this Memorial Day, I'm not and I need advice. Part 3. Update 2. I'd like to thank LuigianFiggy42 for his suggestion on starting with an email. I wrote Luna a short email with the subject "What do you want?" and didn't anticipate a multi-paragraph answer. She began the email by sincerely apologizing for her actions. She was upset when she discovered I wasn't her father. She approached her mother and sobbed, promising not to tell me. She started to speak to my cousin, her biological father, more and more as she felt lost. He informed her about my violent history, the things I used to do that I kept hidden from her. This enraged her, and the more they spent time together, the more she distanced herself from me. She admitted to feeling awful now and again, but my cousin would reaffirm her sentiments for me. She stated she realized how dumb she was behaving the day of the quince when we were dancing. She saw how much I loved her, and her messages began to emerge on the screen. My wife's side of the family encouraged her to give me room in the days that followed. She agreed not to call me. She said she was seeing her family break apart as a result of her, and she couldn't do anything to help. She said she could see why I did what I did. She still wanted to reach out. Her grandpa continued assuring her, I loved her, I reared her, and I would do the right thing despite what I witnessed via her communications, and she believed him. During the divorce, her mother slipped into a deep depression. She wasn't talking to her, she wasn't eating, she was simply surviving. She suffered a panic episode after learning that my name had been deleted off her birth certificate. Her mother informed her that they would have to return to Brooklyn, and she inquired about her life in school. Her mother informed her, that was the life your father gave you, and he's no longer your father, so she begged me and I cursed her out and hung up. She sobbed for many days. She attempted to contact my cousin, who mostly ignored her. She even went to church, and he told her she had to leave. She was called a mistake. Her mother refused to speak to her and essentially shut herself in a room, only going to use the restroom or shower. She asked her grandpa to accompany her to meet me, but when they arrived on Long Island, she found out that I had relocated. Her grandpa assured her that he would speak with my grandma to find out where I had gone. According to her, the following 2 years were agony. Her and her mother's fate was known throughout the community. Her father avoided her at all costs and attempted unsuccessfully to avoid paying child support. It needed her granddad to frighten him in order for him to begin paying. Meanwhile, her mother remained silent. She had just recently been imprisoned in her room. When they did speak, she labeled her an ungrateful girl and blamed her for losing the love of her life. Her grandpa had to put her mother in her place by informing her that her adultery was the reason she lost her love, and she shut herself back into the room. So Luna hardly remained at home, and that's how she met her child's father. They were the same age, he worked at the corner bodega, and after a few months of talking, one thing led to another, and she became pregnant. Her grandpa was outraged, but when her lover insisted on marrying her, everything calmed down. Luna saw her pregnancy to be a gift in disguise. Her mother started chatting to her again, and she began leaving the room for every checkup. It was cliché to be a senior in high school while pregnant, but she made it work. She graduated a month before the kid was delivered, and her partner joined the Marines. He had planned to elope before departing, but she had other plans. Her partner had no reservations about naming his kid after me. His father was apparently absent, and the fact that he was a junior served as a reminder that he bore the name of a guy who didn't want him. She received a speeding ticket attempting to get to my grandmother's apartment when she heard I was in town because she wanted to see me. She wanted to apologize and meet her kid. She only wanted to see me. She was late, though, and she sobbed. When her mother gave her my phone number, she wanted to contact me right away, but everyone in the neighborhood was talking about how I beat up her father, so she waited. Her mother was disappointed to learn that I had gone on and had a son. Luna was overjoyed to learn she had a younger brother, but her mother grew even more depressed. Mary Soul made me feel bad. I phoned Mary Soul after reading the email and asked her whether this was real. That she refused to communicate with Luna for years, blaming her for our divorce. She verified it, and at first I shouted at her, but when I heard her weeping, I recovered my composure. I told her she needed to move on. Find another person, but she declined. She informed me that I was and would always be her spouse. It somewhat crushed my heart. I then had my grandma accompany me to visit my cousin so I could speak with him. He started to weep as soon as he heard my voice and asked me to forgive him. I basically asked him why he wasn't a father figure to Luna. Why he poisoned her against me, and he said it was out of jealousy. He was madly in love with Mary Soul, and I stole her away from him. He consoled her after I was detained. Manipulated her for a split second before she realized what she was doing and shoved him off of her, but he had already arrived. He knew the kid was his when she found out she was pregnant. They were both aware. It was meant to be a well-guarded secret. Marisol accepted her double hysterectomy as God's punishment for her adultery and deception. Luna was inebriated when he turned 13. Seeing my life, he couldn't help but be envious. So he set out to damage it. And he succeeded. I hung up on him after telling him that if we ever meet again in hell, I will be his everlasting tormentor. Jocelyn was there for me and assured me that everything will be okay. Luna and I spoke through email. On the 4th, I chatted with her, and she spent almost an hour weeping. I even begged her boyfriend for permission to marry her. I felt it was amusing, but also noble. Jocelyn wants me to invite Luna to my wedding next month. At the same time, Luna wants me to give her away for her November wedding. My future father-in-law sat me down and told me that although he couldn't understand my predicament, he respected the path I had chosen. Because the road saved his young daughter, provided him with a lovely grandson, and provided him with a potential son-in-law he would kill for. I laughed at it. But he advised me to let go of my rage and begin forgiving, but never forget. He is correct. So we invited Luna to my wedding and even offered to pay for her airline ticket, and her boyfriend, or should I say fiancé, said he'd work it off at my garage when they arrived. I like him a lot. What about me handing her away? I'm not sure yet, let's see how the wedding goes first. Thank you for your guidance and the few DMs. Nobody was impolite or disrespectful. You guys were quite helpful. I'll keep you updated if anything occurs, but for now, I have to get ready for my wedding next month. This might be my last update, much has transpired in such a short period of time. I'd want to thank everyone who helped out in the DMs once again. Of course, there were hate comments, but all I could say to those individuals was, what you would have done and what I did are two different mindsets, and don't tell me how I should have felt until you go through the same circumstance or anything comparable. I was already walking on eggshells in the run-up to the wedding. Jocelyn was the happiest I'd ever seen him, and my in-laws were terrified since so many people were expected. I swear the whole town showed up. While all of this was going on, I was in Boise, Idaho, waiting for Luna and her family at the airport. We spoke in the days leading up to her arrival. A great deal. She was largely sobbing and apologizing, and I was simply listening. I was chatting to her fiancé, who is more down to earth, when she couldn't speak anymore. I was terrified as their jet touched down. Not because I was terrified of meeting her again, but because I was angry. I was worried about losing my cool. When she spotted me at the airport, she raced to me, screaming, and for a single second, I saw my 7-year-old daughter. I felt strange, envisioning a kid in my head. She raced shouting "Daddy," and the moment she touched me, she burst into tears. It was like a howl that drew everyone's attention to us. She continued repeating sorry over and over again. I simply held her for nearly 15 minutes as she begged me to forgive her. She would not let me leave. It took her fiancé and myself to persuade her. It was as if she was afraid I'd disappear the moment she let go. After she had calmed down, her fiancé introduced himself properly, and they then presented me to their kid. I'm not going to lie, I wept. I wasn't furious, yet I sobbed when holding this baby. When Luna was 19, she was the spitting image of her mother, which made me worry about Marisol. We chatted about her fiancé's boot camp, how he's going to be a professional guy, how Luna was going to college online to study accounting, and other catching up. Jocelyn and her family had a buffet ready for them when we arrived at my place. Jocelyn has learnt to prepare Spanish meals while we've been together, but the week before Luna's arrival, she went a touch beyond. But I understand why she wants to make a good impression. Her and Luna really clicked. Every few minutes, Luna would stroll towards me, give me a little embrace, and then return to Jocelyn. I had just finished holding my son and grandchild. I put the infants to bed and walked to the veranda for some fresh air while Jocelyn introduced Luna to her family. Luna's fiancé stood at the bottom of the yard, watching at the bisons that roamed about. I wanted to give him the dad talk for a second, but I knew it wasn't my place. Instead, I inquired how he enjoyed the scenery, and he was speechless. Living in the city for the most of your life, big open areas are a wonder to see. After a few moments, he looked at me and told me how sorry Luna was. I've been with your daughter for 3 years, and she never fails to emphasize how much she misses you and regrets what she done. That one remark, out of everything he said to me, keeps replaying in my head. Her fiancé's name is Roberto, and although being only 19 years old, he behaves and speaks like a guy in his 40s. That tells me he had a difficult childhood in order to develop so soon. I understand how you feel. The next day, I had to go shopping, and Luna virtually got in the vehicle with the baby. Even Roberto assured her that everything was fine and that she should enjoy herself. Luna seemed to be about to hyperventilate, so I promised her we'd work a half day and I'd spend the rest of the day with her. That looked to be the end of it, and I gradually realized how traumatized Luan was. During the ride, I asked Roberto how awful she was. She suffers from serious abandonment concerns and is continually scared that he would forsake her, despite his assurances to the contrary. She calls him often, maybe clingy at times, and was first frightened to be herself for fear of breaking up with him. He had to reconfirm his love for her simply so she could relax her guard. This was all my fault. I'm aware of this, but he doesn't hold it against me. He said he totally understood why I did what I did. Let me start by saying that Roberto is a lousy mechanic. He knows nothing about vehicles, so I sent him to the store to work off the airline tickets. We closed early, and Luna literally raced towards me when we arrived. She seemed to be insane. I promised her I'd be right back and she left to see her fiancé. When I entered into my home, Jocelyn informed me that Luna needed to be reminded that everything is good. That I will never abandon her again. I didn't know what to say when Jocelyn grabbed my hands and told me Luna was in pain and needed her father. I spent the following several days focusing only on Luna. Getting back to know her. I brought her to Mayan ranch laws and showed her the bison and elks, as well as taking her on a trek. I apologized to her for leaving 2 days before the wedding. I apologized for how I behaved and for the acts I took. She didn't want to hear anything. She told me there was nothing I need apologize for, that she knew she was the reason everything broke apart, that she knew it was her responsibility and that I had to stop her. I started crying and assured her it wasn't her fault. I was furious, I was upset, and despite what had occurred, I should be the one to apologize. We both sobbed and embraced each other. Luna looked to be doing well, she was cheerful on the day of my wedding. Jocelyn added her as a bridesmaid and Roberto as a groomsman at the last minute. The wedding was lovely, and at the reception, I requested that the DJ play a song from Luna's quinceañera, and I invited her to dance with me. She was sobbing the whole time, clutching my hand for dear life as we danced. I haven't been this content in a long time. I let Luna and her fiancé remain in my home and look after her younger brother while I went on my honeymoon to Hawaii. She was overjoyed when we arrived home. It felt fantastic when she embraced us. Roberto informed me that he would be attending Camp Dwyer in Afghanistan and would want to know whether Luna could remain with us. He'd pay for an apartment near us until he could afford to purchase a home. Naturally, I said sure. They returned to town the day before yesterday. As I already said, it has been an interesting year. Luna's wedding is scheduled for November, and Roberto will depart in December. Roberto provided me a year's rent for a townhouse neighborhood 3 miles distant from my home. However, Jocelyn suggests that we install a double wide on our land for Luna and let her save up for a home when Roberto returns. Mary Soul has been blowing up my phone, and based on the texts she has left, she is upset that Luna is relocating. My priority right now is my family and repairing my bond with my daughter.